Welcome to the Nerd Party.
I like what I call this kind of snowballing effect of storylines, and cross-cutting parallel action is a wonderful tool for a filmmaker.
Welcome to House of Nolan, the podcast on the Nerd Party Network, where we go through all of Christopher Nolan's films in chronological release order. I'm your host for today, Brandon Shea Mutella, and joining me, as always, is my ever-constant co-hosting team of Tristan Riddell and John Mills. John, how are you doing today? You're looking a little sleepy.
Doing pretty good, but so I'm on day 6, up to midnight. I can't sleep. There's light. Hooah.
Hooah. Hooah.
Yes,
I knew that. Awesome. Tristan, how are you doing?
I'm good. I just want to let you guys know that we're in this together. You know, it was an accident, and just like you guys had your accident, and I think like my dogs are on a special diet. Do you think you guys could just take care of them real quick?
This is going to be a fun episode.
Yes, excellent. We are discussing Christopher Nolan's third feature film, Insomnia, which is a remake of a Norwegian film from only 5 years earlier called Insomnia. Tristan, what was your first time watching this film?
Oh, man. This was... I did not have a good first experience with this movie. It was a rental, and it was a group of people. And you never really can absorb a movie with a group of people because it was a group of friends. You know, we were all just hanging out. This was a new release. So it came out. I can't remember if it came out in 2000. I know the movie came out in 2002, but I can't remember if DVD came out in 2002 or 2003. But there was a group of friends, and I was getting super bored. There was a girl I was very interested in at the time. I mean, like super interested in. And she went out to the stoop to get some air. And so what do you think I did 10 minutes later? You know, I went out to the stoop to get some air. And so I didn't really see it all the way through the first time. And I was just like, this is boring. And there's this girl I got to talk to. And now that I've seen all of his films multiple times and gone back to Insomnia, so I was able to appreciate his style and his influence a little bit more than the first time. I don't know if it's just because of that or if because I'm older or what, I don't know. But it was, I was able to latch onto a few more things and find a little bit more interest and find a little bit more entertaining value to the movie instead of just the tough slog that it was at one time.
Excellent. John, tell us about your first encounter with Insomnia.
First and foremost, I want to say that the idea of following somebody outside to grab some air during a film would have been an instant disqualifier. Had said object of my affection gotten up and left the theater for some reason during the showing of a film, it would have been an immediate, nope, not interested in you anymore. But
this was a rental, man. It was a rental. It wasn't a theatrical experience.
I don't care. You sit your butt down and you watch the thing. And if you can't pay attention that long to the movie, you can't pay attention to me. It's just the way that it is. So my first experience was also on home video. I would have probably watched this with my brother, actually, because this is right up our alley. This is crime procedural sort of stuff. You know, big Pacino fans growing up and you know, who doesn't love Robin Williams and everything. And it's like, oh, okay. Oh, hey, from the guy who directed Memento. Yeah, sure. Let's check it out. Didn't see it in the movie theater, but, you know, whatever. Yeah, you know, checked it out and I actually had a positive experience with it. He and I both liked it. And I've found myself to be, strangely over the years, I seem to be the one person I've ever known who saw it and the first time they saw it said, yeah, this is a good movie. I like this. It's always been sort of like de facto defending it, not defending it like passionately or anything, but just sort of, why do you hate it so much, people? Like that sort of like I'm stumbling in the fog trying to find somebody who also liked the movie, that sort of thing.
And then when you found them, you shut them.
Well, you know, I don't want to spoil the ending for you, Brandon. What about you?
Okay, so I was just, while you were talking there, I was checking my Twitter feed here because I do Letterboxd. and I also tweet the last 4 movies that I watched. So I saw this movie for the first time on March 31st of 2020. And this was the last Christopher Nolan film that I'd ever seen. This was my last one. And I had to double check because as of this year, there had been 2 that I hadn't seen, and I watched them both on the same day, and I couldn't remember the order. So the other one that I had never seen was Prestige, and I watched them back to back, but I watched Prestige first. So this was my last Nolan film.
Okay, so you came into this. This was the last one that you had not seen, previous Tenet and everything like that. Mm-hmm. I'm especially fascinated then to get we're getting your first reaction.
This is the second time that I've seen it now, so I did just watch it, and I was exposed to the Norwegian version of Insomnia first, and I do really enjoy that movie. And I'm a big fan of movies and remakes and sequels, and I mean, I have a podcast called Franchise Fatigue, which is devoted to movies and remakes and sequels. But I don't know why it took me so long to get to these 2 movies, because for both of them, I had actually heard nothing but good things about both of them. I don't know. I finally just got around to watching it. So the first time I watched it, I was really thrown for a loop, because to me, even still after a second watch, this is the least Christopher Nolan film out of the 10 Christopher Nolan films. Like, this is the oddity to me. And I don't know if you guys agree with me on that point of view or not, but it's kind of his most, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like just a textbook film. It's a textbook film where I don't really see a lot of Nolan in this.
It's definitely a straightforward film.
And it's interesting that it's a remake. And I always find these kinds of movies fascinating with Hollywood, because it's like we've got this really awesome foreign film that people love. And it feels like, oh, I've seen this movie. This is great. We should totally make it in English so people watch it. And I kind of feel that way with this movie and with other movies, not just this one. But it's like, why does something like this need to be remade so quickly after its original has come out? So that might be part of the reason why I never got around to watching it too, was just kind of that little bit of hesitation on these types of remakes. But I don't know if this would be jumping the gun on it, but in rewatching it this weekend, I actually did watch both versions of the movie. And upon reflecting and watching both back to back, I would say that this is definitely superior than the Norwegian version. Like, this is a really good movie. And my appreciation of this film has gone up with a second viewing.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, just on the note about the remakes, what's interesting is Magnificent Seven comes out incredibly quickly after Seven Samurai. And it's lifted from that, but at the very least, there's a cultural shift accounted for. It's put into the Old West. It's adapted into a thing that is more relatable to the culture of the time. The worldwide market wasn't quite what it is now and stuff like that. But what's really interesting about your point about, I have not seen the Norwegian original. However, because of Liam Neeson's movie, and I don't think it was called Hard Powder when it finally came out, but he recently was in the remake of In Order of Disappearance, which is also a Norwegian movie, and they remade it in short order. And I remember when I first heard the synopsis of that, it was actually caught on tape on a show I was doing. I laughed so hard I was crying because it sounded so absurd. But the Norwegians come up with these really good concept films that really, really work. What I'm getting at eventually here is I agree with you that this is more of a straightforward textbook movie. This speaks to me as the movie where Warner Brothers said, okay, kid, your foot's in the door. Let's show us that you can do something on schedule, on budget, and get this released on time to prove that you can work in the system, that this first one wasn't a fluke, that I can give you a script and you know what you're doing. Because, there are a lot of great directors like Coppola. He struggled with that through his whole career, where he couldn't get things done on budget, on time. And so it almost seems like this was a test for Nolan to see if he could, do that.
I think it could be perceived that way from Warner Brothers, where I don't think it was presented to him as a test. I think it turned out to be a test, because this is the first and only film of Christopher Nolan's that he directed that he doesn't have a writing credit on. And that wasn't initially his idea, because like Following and Memento were like, okay, I have an idea for a movie. I'm going to go make this movie. And Batman Begins onward from that was, I have an idea for a movie. Let me make this movie. But with Insomnia, it was a production that was already had the ball rolling, and it was Soderbergh who saw Memento and was like, okay, I need to get this guy for this movie. And so hiring Nolan was actually Steven Soderbergh's idea. And so he reached out to him and then talked with Warner Brothers, and they're like, okay, let's see what this guy can do. And even though the final shooting script was rewritten by Nolan himself, the original script, as well as several revisions, were mainly just the guy who has main credit on it, which I am totally blanking on right now. It's Hillary Swank did the original screenplay. Brandon, I agree with you. This doesn't feel like a Nolan story. I think it definitely feels like a Nolan film because of how it looks and how it's edited, and it was the same editor as Memento. Like the sweeping shots, the cinematography, and everything like that. It definitely feels like a Nolan film, but not a Nolan story. And that is definitely why, because it was never Nolan's idea. Like, they came to him to do it, not the other way around.
They made some interesting changes to the script. Well, I guess at first is that the thing that they're kind of escaping from is very different. Like in the Norwegian movie, it's like a sexual scandal, and in this one, it's the planting of the evidence. However, the really major difference that really makes you feel differently about the main character is in the Norwegian version, he actually kills the dog. He shoots the dog in order to get the bullet. He doesn't just come across a dead dog. And I think that's like a very interesting thing. The main character in the Norwegian version seems like more of a morally corrupt individual than Al Pacino's character will in this movie here, so I think that's a really, really interesting different take. And then at the very end of the Norwegian version, the cop that's investigating the murder of the other cop gives him back the bullet and he just drives away. And there's kind of like this ambiguous ending as to what happened, where in the Al Pacino version, the Nolan version, he says, no, don't give up your values, or whatever it is he says to Hillary Swank's
Don't lose your way.
Don't lose your way. And it's kind of a redeeming factor for him. So I kind of want to point out a couple of those really interesting differences between the two movies.
I think a lot of times when you see an American version where they remove the harm done to animals, it became a joke for a while that they would, like in Independence Day, they would blow up entire cities, but they made sure to save the dog in the tunnel. Like it jumped out of the flames in time and stuff like that. So I think probably that adjustment, honestly, would be to like people would regard him as they wouldn't give him any shot at trying to redeem himself if they saw him kill a dog. Like it's the weirdest thing, but I do think that probably played into it.
And I haven't seen the Norwegian version myself, but I have read about it. And if I remember correctly, and Brandon, you touched on this about him being a morally corrupt individual. I remember reading about this character and thinking, wow, this guy is a jackass. Like, he's disgusting. Like, didn't he like inappropriately grab the underage girl? Like in the Norwegian version, like in the Nolan version, he just like scares her in the car. But in the Norwegian version, he grabs her, and then like he goes
like right up her dress to the crotch, like all the way.
And then he almost sexually assault the girl, the woman working at the inn. I'm like, when I'm reading this, I'm just like, if I watched that movie, I'd be like, I don't care about him. Let him go to jail. Right. Like with the Nolan version, with Pacino, at least there's some ambiguity where you're just like, did he mean to do it? Did he not? Like, this guy is clearly having a moral hard time with it, and he's trying to redeem himself, or like he's trying to get the right person behind jail. And like for that, like I was invested in the character, but in the Norwegian one, it doesn't. And again, I haven't seen it, so I can't judge it. But from what I know about it, I'm like, I have no interest in that character. Also, side fact: the idea of Pacino being from Los Angeles and planting evidence was actually his assistant's idea, and Nolan liked the idea so much he put it into the script.
Oh, that is, well, I mean, it is a good idea because it does, I think it gives him a much more, because we're all also very used to that idea of the cop who's just frustrated because the bastard's going to go free, so I'm going to make sure he doesn't, sort of thing. And we know it's wrong, it's ethically wrong, it's terrible, never should do that, but at the same time, we could understand why the guy would snap and be tortured about it later. and just to have to carry that secret around with him. And I do like the scene where he spills his guts to the inn owner and says, he keeps begging her, practically saying, "Tell me what you think. Was I right? Was I right?" Like he's desperately waiting for somebody to validate him in that choice. I do think that there's one specific issue that is weird for me that I can't get away from so long as we're talking about the character. And that is that I think that Pacino was, this is going to come out all sorts of wrong. I'm just going to say he wasn't right for the role. I think that they should have gone with somebody else. Yeah. I thought
that the first time I watched it, but I did like him a lot more the second time. I mean, like the first time I watched it, I thought both Robin Williams and Al Pacino were miscast. And I mean, I've seen Robin Williams in the 60-minute photo or 1 hour photo, whatever it's called. And I did really enjoy him in that movie. And I thought he did a very good job in that. But for me, he felt a little miscast in this one. And I still didn't quite like Robin Williams as the choice. But Al Pacino grew on me this time. And I got to say, like the editing and the filming and Al Pacino's acting of the being so tired, like was really, really spot on. Like I'm a person who suffers from insomnia frequently. And I don't know. I think they really captured it. I think they captured it way better than the Norwegian version. It was really super well done. And I really grew to appreciate Pacino this second viewing.
I agree that Pacino's performance is really good. I don't have any problem with his performance. I agree that it's more nuanced than we're even really used to getting with Pacino by this point. There's, he is in the full hoo-ah phase of his career by this point, but Nolan still gets a good, subtle Pacino performance out of him. And, the explosive temper feels like it has a place and it fits, and it only occurs after he's been basically run through the ringer of sleepless nights and everything like that. It seems like a logical culmination. So my problem is not his performance. It's that I think that he wasn't served well by the setup. It's really hard for me to say this without coming across as making some sort of like, oh, he's too old for the part, which is not what I'm saying. His demeanor, maybe it's more that I think that he was too likable because I rooted for him through the movie, but here he is. It's obvious from the beginning that he's somewhat corrupt, that he's done something wrong, and he's too likable. Maybe that's just me coming at it as a Pacino fan with that sort of emotional baggage with it. In terms of Williams, I loved his casting. I think that a problem is once you see Robin Williams in the credits and in the ads, the stopwatch in your head is, when am I going to get to Robin Williams scenes? So his reveal doesn't have the same sort of impact as if he were an unknown, which I think is unfortunate because he was a terrific actor. And I think he does well in this role.
I find that interesting because one thing that I really enjoyed about Insomnia every single time that I watched it, even though I liked it sometimes more than others, was Al Pacino and Robin Williams. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just saying that like it was different for me because when they're together, like when Williams and Pacino is together, you can tell that they really worked on it together, that they really tried to get that chemistry going, that give and take, that back and forth, and make it feel really natural. It felt real to me, and that's very hard to do when I'm watching a scene and not just picturing people acting acting like they're acting. And that scene on the boat, on the ferry, it really just like while I was watching, I was just like, man, I'm so glad that Pacino's in this. I'm so glad that Williams is in this. And this was the same year that 1 Hour Photo came out. So in 2002, we get two really creepy Robin Williams performances. And so I just eat it up every single time. Now, John, Harrison Ford was originally considered for Dormer's part. What would you have thought with that?
Wouldn't have worked.
Why would that wouldn't have worked?
I mean, I can say right off the bat from a personal emotional level, he would have been too likable again, because I would have been like, hey, it's my buddy Harrison Ford. But I also, as good an actor as he is, I maybe I would want to see it because I'd want to see him bring an edge, because he's always been such a pleasant surprise when they put him in something like, even though I didn't like the movie as a whole, like What Lies Beneath, he pulls off that role really well. He's magnificent in Regarding Henry. He's great in Blade Runner. Like he can do these sorts of roles. So maybe it's just my own bias, coming out there, I guess, my own emotional baggage.
Now, one thing with Al Pacino and Robin Williams and Hillary Swank is that Nolan in an interview talked about how they all have very different acting styles and they all have very different acting needs. And apparently Al Pacino does meticulous planning and preparation, several meetings with the director, with the writer, and with the producers, and with the cinematographer, and everything like that, where he talks about his character, his motivation, his intricacies, the backstory, and everything like that. Robin Williams does, and also Al Pacino likes to do a lot of takes. Robin Williams doesn't like to do a lot of preparation, not a lot of rehearsal, but does like to do a lot of takes. And so Nolan said that it was a lot of fun to see Pacino and Williams just work on their characterization together, where he would just like let the camera roll and let them work, and they would figure it out after several takes together. Hillary Swank is just like, no, let's give me 2 takes and then I'm done. Like, I get it, I prepare, I'm in the zone. She's just there to work and go to the next shot. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's really fascinating when you have those kind of different personalities mixed in one film from behind the scenes perspective.
Yeah, that is neat. And again, like, the performances are really good. I honestly think that the overall issue that I have with the film as a whole is I just don't think the script is all that spectacular. I honestly think that this is a case of, when the three of us were talking about Fincher, we talked about the same sort of thing where he can come into a project, and even if it's not, the best script or the best circumstances or whatever, you can tell that Fincher came at it and said, okay, I'm going to make this the best of what it is that I can possibly make. And I get that same sort of vibe here. I will say that in terms of, because we were talking about the photography back on Memento, you can see the next evolution of the combined abilities of Nolan and Pfister on this. We get much more of that grand vista sort of treatment, like in the very opening, like you see that plane photography, and the first thought that occurs to me is this is really going to pay off in The Dark Knight Rises. Yes. They are figuring everything out right now. That is really going to pay off. And there are also, like, one of the things that I really love is that I think that there would have also been a real desire on the part of some director and director of photography duos to try to mute and flatten the colors in a certain way. And obviously, they have their own style here, but the saturation of the greens that really happens and some of the background colors is so vibrant. What's really interesting is one of my daughters actually walked in near the end of the film, which of course got her a slight chiding for me of, you need to watch the whole movie if you want to watch it. But she saw the background and she said, is that a special effect? And I said, why would you think it's a special effect? And she pointed out, she's like, oh, well, this is really, that image is really vibrant and, and that sort of thing. And it's really interesting because I don't consider it a vibrant movie, but, in terms of the visuals, but I do think that there are moments where they really make like the green in the background come alive while the stuff in the foreground is more muted. And I lack the technical terms for what I'm going for on that.
Mm-hmm. See, that's not Pfister. Just tell her, just so that she knows, that that's just Canada. Canada's just that glorious.
Well, I did assure her that it was a real place where they filmed. I did assure her. And I said that if she didn't leave the room before the movie was over, I was going to send her there. So
I'm really glad that you pointed out the cinematography on this, because, and also, like, this is Pfister and Nolan working things out, because right when you see though the opening vistas that you talked about, like when you see the ice and the snow and the trees and everything like that, it I was immediately transported to Batman Begins during the training sessions that Christian Bale had with Liam Neeson. And I was like, I've seen these shots. And I know that people would be like, it's a helicopter shot of a landscape. Every director's done it. I'm like, yes, I get it. I know it's nothing unique. I'm not saying it's groundbreaking. I'm just saying that there was something about the color. There was something about the movement. There was something about the angles chosen that was very Nolan Pfister that we see a couple times moving forward. And it was, I think that's that shot alone. I know it was like right at the beginning of the movie, but like that shot alone made me think this is Nolan. And you were talking about the script and about how I want to go back to that just a little bit and share a quick little story. So you were talking about how the script isn't so great. And with Fincher, like even if he didn't write the script, he can still take it and make it his own. There was one thing, and please don't make fun of me. But when I was really getting into filmmaking and getting into the behind the scenes of filmmaking, and I was questioning whether or not I wanted to go to film school, I started really getting into Dawson's Creek. And it was like one thing that really drew me to the show was because the character of Dawson wanted to be a filmmaker. He wanted to be a film student. And in the first year of college, like he goes and becomes an intern on a film set. And he was talking with the director, and this would never happen in real life, of course. Like the director and him struck up a nice friendship and relationship, just like how it happens, an intern and a director. And he was thinking about doing a movie, and he's like, "Hey, I want you to know what you think about this script." And so he reads the script, and he's like, "What do you think of it?" He's like, "Well, it's got a monkey in it." And he's like, "It doesn't matter." He's like, this script doesn't matter. I can take a crappy script and make a good movie. And something like that was kind of, even though this was a fictionalized example, it kind of opened my eyes to that, because before I knew a lot about filmmaking, I was just like, well, isn't everything dependent on the script? Isn't your entire movie dependent on the script? And obviously it's the baseline. It's the idea. It's how you get started. But it kind of opened my eyes to how you can have an amazing director take a horrible script and convert it into a magnificent movie. Sadly, this is not one of those times where I definitely agree with you, John, where I think I feel like if this was truly Nolan's script, and maybe even Jonathan Nolan's script, it would have been a better film. But because he just kind of revised the initial draft, you feel it. And Brandon, like at the beginning of the episode, you talked about how this doesn't feel like a Nolan story and it's too straightforward. I think that's where it breaks off for the viewer experience, is that there's nothing special about this except for a dirty cop trying to cover his tracks, which we see on TV every week. And this felt like an amped up TV script to me.
So the odd thing for me that we'll eventually get to is where do you see Nolan in this? And I wanted to talk about this because this is where I see Nolan, but it's not necessarily something that I like. And that's with the main title sequence. So to me, while there is a lot of import on the dirty evidence and the blood on the sleeve, I don't understand why he focuses on that in the main title sequence. Because, to me, when he does this, it's like we're supposed to think that this is the killer, because we know this is a movie about a killing, and the killer's done something, and they keep going back to it, and we're supposed to think that it's the killer, and it's not really until the end of the movie that you realize, oh, that's not what we've been seeing. We've been seeing this other thing that's happened in this cop's life. To me, this is the major Nolan thing in this is this misdirect of the main title sequence. What do you guys think of the main titles?
I agree. It's a misdirect. And, because it's the reveal later. It's like, oh, no, that's what he was thinking of while he was on the plane, while he was flying there, sort of thing. Okay. I think that I'm going to wind up agreeing with you, I guess, because to me, this feels like one of those things where Nolan is tacking himself onto it. But the script doesn't lend itself to that. This is where it's sort of like wedging in a thing that he wants to do, but the script doesn't necessarily support it.
I think that's spot on. Yeah, I think that there was something off to me about the opening title sequence too, because I didn't think it was in general, I don't really care. I'm like, okay, fine, do what you want for an opening title sequence. It's just an opening title sequence. But that specifically threw me because it was the same shot repeated over and over again, just zoomed in a little bit. And I'm like, okay, so why is this important? Why are you continually to show us this? And they also they change themes like 3 times, like visual cues 3 times. Like first it's like all white with black text, and then it's blurry, and then we get some landscapes, but then we get some close-ups of the blood, and it felt incohesive. And I think, John, I think you hit it on the head. It feels like a tack on. It's like, how can I rub some Nolan into this? Like, how can I add some flavor? And it didn't really work for me. But one thing that really did work for me was the inserts of the editing, like the flashes, the quick little, like the murder flashes, the flashbacks, the when Pacino was like hallucinating and was like clearly losing sleep and focusing on everything. Like, I thought the editor did a fantastic job of not overdoing it, like not making it constant where it was annoying, but not doing it so little that it felt out of place. And probably my favorite editing trick in the entire movie was the sequence when it was kind of evocative of Fight Club, where it's like everything's a copy of a copy of a copy. But when he's at the police station and his eyes are kind of scanning the room and he's blinking and everything's out of focus, and then all of a sudden it snaps in focus, and it's not a rack focus, it's a complete cut. It's out of focus, in focus, and then he looks at something else, out of focus, boom, in focus, and it's just completely jarring. But you feel what Pacino's going through, because we've all had lack of sleep. To some sort of degree, to some extreme degree, and it really it threw you in with the protagonist.
I agree. I agree. And I think that it's really interesting that you go there, because that is sort of the thing where it's maybe this is the learning situation for Nolan. Maybe this is the real lesson, is that his style doesn't graft onto somebody else's work as easily as some other director's styles could. Because you have great success there with that flash, because we're going to see that show up in Batman Begins as well. When Bruce has his flashes of his fear and stuff like that, that's going to really work. And but then, in the beginning sequence, that's where it doesn't. So that is really interesting that you have these two things where it's like, here are 2 bits of Nolan, and this is where it does work, this is where it doesn't work. And I think it really actually exposes something about him structurally and how he approaches the material, to let you know that is just endemically a part of him. That's just always going to be a part of his work, because that's just how he sees, things going on. I think that's interesting.
So one person we haven't really talked about too terribly much is Hillary Swank. Don't read into this, and don't think this is, I'm trying to say anything more than what I'm saying. But I don't think Nolan casts female characters very well. And I don't know what that is about. Because I know that, like, John, I know that you disagree with me.
I do.
On more than a few occasions. But there is just something about, like, I never really feel like the female actors fit the female characters in his stories. I don't know if it's the writing. I like, maybe it's the writing. Maybe it's not the casting. Because obviously he casts amazing actresses, like just absolutely phenomenal actresses. But yet they don't deliver. Like, is it something where he doesn't know how to direct women? Do people not know how to write for women? Like, what is it about it? Like, am I alone in this? John, tell me I'm wrong here, or tell me why I might be right, or why I am feeling the way that I'm feeling.
I think you are wrong, because I think, looking at Memento, Carrie-Anne Moss is terrific.
I think she's the exception, the absolute exception.
I don't think she's the exception. I really don't. I think that when you go along later, I think that, especially, for instance, in The Dark Knight, I think Maggie Gyllenhaal is terrific in that.
Oh, I completely disagree.
You're wrong. That's
completely
fine.
100% disagree.
Yeah,
she was completely miscast for that.
No, wow, you're completely way off base for that. Completely way off base. I think that there is I think that with Nolan, the way that he approaches female characters, and I'm going to come back to the Hillary Swank thing. I think the way that he approaches female characters is a lot more for lack of a better term, this is the only adjective I can come at it with, has a lot more, from my perception, like a British sensibility than an American one. And I think that's possibly what doesn't click for some people when they're watching it. I think that winds up creating its own hurdles in terms of, how people relate to the characters. Take it or leave it as it is. For me, in terms of Hillary Swank, I honestly think it is, again, really the fault of the script. I think that there are definite opportunities to give that character more to do, to tie her in more to the story. Mm-hmm. And I think that the misstep is that they did not take the time to slow down and say, we have freaking Hillary Swank. How do we get her more involved? Mm-hmm. What can we rewrite? Who can we write out to bring her more into the story?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the hurdle here. It's not that he can't direct women. It's not that he cast the wrong woman. It's that she's got so little to do until the very last, 20 minutes of the movie. And it's like, where was this earlier? Why couldn't I have more of this earlier? Because she is great. And her arc, especially with relation to Dormer, is so integral to the story. And it's not given the time that it needs to pay off the way that it does at the end. I think that's the problem.
John, with Hillary Swank specifically and this script, I 100% agree with you. You have an Oscar-winning actress. I can't remember if this is before or after, but she clearly has the talent, and she was completely underutilized, and she needed to be integrated into this story much more. 100% agree.
I would agree that I think it's the script in this case. I don't know many Hillary Swank movies. I was looking it up. I was looking up here right now. I've only seen 3 Hillary Swank movies. I was looking on Letterboxd. I've seen Logan Lucky, I've seen Insomnia, and I've seen Sometimes They Come Back Again. And so, I mean, I don't know her much as an actress, but I think it's the script. And, it's interesting that John says that he thinks that her relationship with him is integral to the script, because that relationship in the Norwegian version is nowhere near this. In the Norwegian version, It's just like another cop, right? And she's an older cop who's helping in investigating. And to me, I didn't like the aspect that she's this googly-eyed fan of his in the Nolan version. That kind of felt out of place to me in this movie.
But see, that I think right there gets to the casting missteps maybe then that I'm thinking of in terms of Pacino, right? Is that would have worked for me more if the two characters were closer in age, and I enjoy the fact that you see through her eyes, she looks up to him. Mm-hmm. And then the whole thing becomes a meditation at the end through her character's eyes of being careful how you approach your heroes. And she learns a very valuable lesson that they are human and they make mistakes as well. And that sort of thing. I think that's a very worthwhile arc and a very worthwhile theme to explore. I think that you need her more in there, or if she's going to have as small a part as this, then she should be, by your accounting of the Norwegian version, closer in age, more experienced, and therefore that explains why she is able to deduce that he is hiding something, because she's accomplished in her own right. Whereas this is much more of a, she's trying to be like him and finding out about her hero. Whereas, maybe that would have resolved the mechanics issue of it then.
I don't want this to come off the wrong way. It's not because she's a woman. It's not because she's young. Probably it's more because she's younger than him. But it's like every interaction she has with him is like that fan person that interviews the celebrity, but they already know the answer. Oh, is that where you got the knife cut at 337 Abbott Street or whatever she says to him, and rattles off the whole thing. And then when she's showing him the map, oh, how you couldn't have seen him from here and here. Just the way that it is, it's like she already knows the answer. And I think that that type of performance should come from somebody older. So yeah, I think that's part of the miscast.
One question I have, actually, and Brandon, I know you've well established you're a huge, film score buff. With this score in specific, does anything stand out to you about it, or does this just feel like this could have been anybody's work put in this film.
The music was okay to me. Like it was just fine. It reminded me a lot of the music from Memento. And like it was the same composer, David Julian. So like it just felt like part of what's going on in Nolan's career right now. Like it wasn't anything stand out. It was fitting for the movie, but that's about all that I could say for it. It didn't blow my socks off.
I think I connected with it a little bit more than you guys did. I don't think it was amazing, but towards the end, I think once you get to the third act, the music started becoming a little bit more prevalent. You start noticing a little bit more. And to me, even though it wasn't Zimmer, it felt like Nolan to me. It felt like Nolan figuring out. This felt very much, so much Insomnia felt like training wheels. For Chris Nolan and the people that he's working with, where Memento felt like a complete work. Like, this is the vision. This is what's going on. Yeah, obviously with Following it's different because you see him testing things out, and he's a baby filmmaker. But with Insomnia, it feels like he's trying to figure out who he is and who he wants to be, and music was one part of that I really felt. And I'm not a musician, so I can't tell you specifics. But there was a couple of times when I was like, okay, this feels like later Nolan, even though it's not the composer that he works with the most.
And I just checked it out, and this guy did The Following as well. And he also did a short film, Doodlebug, and we'll see him again on The Prestige, and that's the extent of them working together.
Cool. Maybe that's why. Well, it feels like we're rounding third here, so I'm thinking we need to, I think now that we have 3, I think we should rank as well as rate. What do you guys think?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm down for it.
So this one's pretty easy for me because I have, even though I wasn't in love with Insomnia and I was kind of dreading watching it again, I definitely enjoyed it this time the most, as I've said a couple of times. It's still nowhere good, as good as Memento. And so for me, it definitely goes Memento first, then Insomnia, then Following. But I think this one is a 3.5 stars for me, because I think it has a lot of good things in it, but so much misses the mark. There's so much wrong with it. I think the pacing is a little slow. I think it definitely could be leaner and meaner, but really you have a generic script, and I think that's the fundamental flaw with it. And so that's why I think I might be being generous with a 3.5. It could be a 3. But I think I'm, just because I really enjoyed the editing and I really enjoyed the cinematography, I'd have to say 3.5. John, what about you?
I'm in the exact same camp, same rating as well, 3.5. And it's Memento, Insomnia, Following. Insomnia has Tristan, to reply to your I wrestled with the is it 3 or 3.5 thing as well. I think what pushes it up to the half is just the fact that the ending is so well done, and the fact that despite all of my misgivings and all of the stutter steps and especially the misuse of the Maura Tierney character, that's a character that just like sort of goes nowhere in a big circle sort of thing. And so I was inclined toward a 3, but then I do think that the ending is staged so well and shot really well, and then does have a nice wrap up to that arc of, be careful about who you idolize and understand that they're human and they make mistakes too. So, that's why it gets a 3.5 from me. Where do you end up, Brandon?
So I would rank these the way that you guys do, with Memento, Insomnia, and Following. And I give this a 4 stars out of 5, which is I gave 5. You guys gave 4.5 for Memento. And I think I gave 3 for Following, and you guys gave 2.5. So I'm only half a star off. I'm not nuts this time. I'm not crazy. So
we do give you a lot of crap. Because it's a lot of fun.
I love movies.
But it's all with love in our hearts. I'm very upfront about the fact that I love that about you, that like you'll come out of left field 5 stars. I'm like, of course it was. Sure. Like I dig that, man. So please understand that any jibes we make are all in fun.
Yes. But I'm glad I watched this again. And I am so glad that I actually watched both back to back, because when we were talking, I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast, but I know that Tristan and I were talking behind the scenes, and I'm like, Norwegian version is definitely better than this. And you know what? It's not. This is definitely better than the Norwegian version. I mean, like, a lot of that boils down to budget. I mean, like, Nolan must have had a bigger budget. Like, the Norwegian version is very low budget. I can appreciate it. And I love movies that take place in, like, forests and stuff like this that's supposed to be in Alaska and stuff, you know, things like Twin Peaks and stuff like that, looking at cities and towns that look like that with these big giant trees and mountains and waterfalls and stuff. Like, I just love seeing that kind of stuff because I love British Columbia so much, and British Columbia is a beautiful place, and anytime I get to see it on screen is wonderful. So
just
excellent.
watch any X-Files episode and you'll be set.
Only from the first 5 seasons.
That's true. You're right.
John, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please tell people where they can find you when you're not writing sleazy crime novels.
Oh, well, you know, that's my dream. But actually, you can find me writing over at kesseljunkie.com, KESSELJUNKIE.com. You can find me as Kessel Junkie on Twitter and Letterboxd. And basically, I try to have that name everywhere that I go. And you can find me right here on the Nerd Party Network on a show called Aggressive Negotiations. It's a Star Wars podcast where we look at the nooks and crannies of the English muffin that is the Star Wars galaxy. That's where people can find me. Tristan, where can people find you?
You can find me on Letterboxd and Twitter under the name of The Insane Robin. And you can find me on this network with a few archive shows. You can find me on a show called Nerd Nuptial, where I review movies and TV shows with my wife. Punch It, Writing in Star Trek, a Star Trek show where I analyze the writing of Star Trek with my co-host Charlene Schmidt. And we finished a mini-series, which is a commentary series just for the Star Trek cartoon Lower Decks. It's called Second Contact, and that was a lot of fun. You guys should check it out. You can find so many other shows at thenerdparty.com. There's Star Wars shows, Star Trek shows, Babylon 5, Doctor Who, Harry Potter, film, TV, something for everyone at thenerdparty.com. And make sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Just search The Nerd Party. And on Twitter, we're at Join Nerd Party. Brandon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Matella, and you can find me with 3 other podcasts that I do. One of them is called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast where my friends Chris and Tom and I go over Hitch's films in chronological order. You can find me on the United Federation of Podcast Network with 2 shows. One's called Infinite Diversity, which is all about new Star Trek, and we just finished our coverage of Lower Decks as well, and we're very much looking forward to checking out the Discovery Season 3, which is coming out right away here. And another show that I have is called Franchise Fatigue, which, as I said earlier, covers movies, remakes, and sequels. And that is a whole heck of a lot of fun. And John has been a guest multiple times. Tristan, will have to get you on someday for a movie series, something that you really like or something you really don't like. You never know. Well, that's all we got for you this week. Tune in next time when we cover Batman Begins.